happens if you take the already well-established Kaizo Ironmon challenge and mix it together with all the elements of the extremely popular roguelike genre? You get Roguemon, an impossible challenge that turns Pokemon Fire Red into a brand new adventure with prizes to be won, cursed lands to conquer, and so much more. There is an extremely long list of rules and new features added in this challenge which I know your attention spans can't handle all at once, so instead I'll explain them as we go when it's necessary to understand them. But there is one thing that will never change with a Pokemon game. We start off in Oak's lab choosing our starter, but it's not quite the same as normal. None of these starters are from Generation 3. That's because Roguemon is played on a randomized version of Fire Red that includes the entire national dex. And it's not just encounters that are random. Everything down to each Pokemon's ability, moveset, and stat distribution are all completely random as well. With all that in mind, I picked Wattrel and faced off against the rival and his Blitzel, who was level 6 due to all trainer Pokemon having a 20% level increase. Despite this, we got lucky that one of our random moves was super effective and won the battle. The game congratulated us for this win by giving us 4 potions, our lucky egg, and our first prize roll of the game, which we weren't too lucky in. Every prize roll will select 3 prizes from the available pool, and I get to choose just one of them. Both of these options give me access to fight specific wild Pokemon, since normally gaining XP or any favors from wild Pokemon isn't allowed, but I wasn't overly fond of those options, so I took the berry juice and moved on to the pivoting stage of the game. Don't get me wrong, our Wattrel has been great for us so far, but sadly he's not quite good enough to go any further. If we look at his randomized stats, he's very slow and his attack is a bit too low for what we need. So in this next portion of the game, we're allowed to search the first few routes for a Pokemon that stands a better chance of progressing forward. I'm limited to catching just 5 Pokemon though, and of these 5 I caught a Yamper, a Magnemite, and an Elekid. Now those who are paying close attention might have noticed that every Pokemon we've come across so far has been an electric type. At the start of every run in Roguemon, you have to choose one of the 18 types to lock in and try to beat. So you could do a grass only run or even a fairy only run, but I wanted my first win to be on my favourite type, electric. They've also all been base evolutions. As with every roguelike, you get stronger as you go, so every Pokemon you start with in Roguemon will randomly evolve at least once every run. But let's go back to Elekid, who instantly showed potential to be a great choice. Not because of his decent moveset, and definitely not because of his stats, but he had the ability Levitate. As a pure electric type, this ability makes him immune to his only weakness. And with higher defensive stats, he's looking to be almost... But it's not quite as simple as that. No matter how strong you feel in these challenges, a run can and usually will die at any point, where you will then be forced to reset, re-randomize everything, and start again. But I had faith in this Elekid, and locked him in with our first trainer battle in Viridian Forest. This is our first segment of the game. Since Roguemon was designed to be linear, there is forced routing you must follow in the form of these segments, and segments must be cleared in one attempt without healing at a Pokemon Center. In Viridian Forest, for example, there are 5 total trainers. Of these, the only trainer we have to fight is Bugcatcher Sammy at the end, but since fighting wild Pokemon isn't allowed, you really want to try and battle everyone if possible. I won my first battle, but came out of it on just half HP. Luckily, even though we're not allowed to use the Pokemon Center, we can heal using any of the items we found along the way, all won as a prize. I haven't found any healing on the ground so far, but I still have the potions and berry juice from earlier, so with the help of these, I managed to wipe out everyone in the forest. Once a segment is over, the tracker tells us where we have to go next, but we are allowed a quick trip to the Pokemon Center in between segments. Ice Beam is an incredible move, and took down both of the rivals' Pokemon. I went up and named Elekid so I could become attached to it like it's my own son, and headed into our first gym battle. Gyms are treated like boss segments, where every trainer inside is mandatory to fight in one attempt. So I took out Campollium and started my battle with the gym's leader, Brock, who instead of the usual 2 Pokemon, now has a full team of 6, as will be the same with all other gym leaders. I took out his Pichu and Dragonair with Ice Beam, but then Corphish confused us with Swagger, which sounds bad, but it also boosts our attack, which did hurt when it hit, but it only lasted 1 turn. So now with my added strength, I could finish off the rest of his Pokemon all with 1-hit KOs, and we got our first gym badge. But right after beating a gym is probably the most confusing part of this challenge. First up, we get an increase to our HP and status cap. You can't hoard items in Roguemon. There is a limit to how much healing and status items you can hold at any one time. If you find an item that puts you over this limit, you either have to instantly use or throw away any items until you're back under the limit. But every time we beat a gym, you get a bit of extra space to work with. Next up, we get another prize roll. My options this time were 2 potions and a status heal of my choice, 2 potions and an ether, or a temporary TM voucher. I chose the TM voucher, which means I can now learn one of the ground TMs I find between this gym and the next. Then we have the TM from the gym leader himself. Every gym leader will give me a random TM which I'm allowed to learn, but that decision has to be made immediately. I got Peck from Brock, which I chose to learn, but if I didn't, I'd have to get rid of it in the cleansing phase. Right after beating a gym, you have to completely purge your inventory. Well, not entirely. We can keep healing, status, and PP items, but everything else must be sold away in the shop. Also, all held items besides berries are banned from this point forward, unless won in a prize roll. Perfect. You now know pretty much everything there is to know about Roguemon. There are a few more exciting features that will pop up along the way, but I can finally share with you my 8th attempt of Roguemon, the story of our Elekid. We breezed through Route 3's segment and ran up to the entrance of Mount Moon. This segment can make or break your run. There are a ton of items to find, but there's also a lot of trainers waiting for you. But even though only 2 of these trainers are mandatory, Roguemon offers an extra prize roll at the end if we manage to fully clear this segment, which is a pretty big deal this early on. I went around picking up all the items I could, which included a Shadow Ball TM and a PP Max, which has to be used immediately or be thrown away. So I gave it to Ice Beam and made my way down to the 2 mandatory trainers at the end. The first battle was easy, but the scientist battle went pretty much as bad as it could have. I very stupidly lost all of my Horn Attack PP to Weasel's Grudge, and even worse, I got paralyzed by Time Pulse straight after. With no PP restoration and no paralyzed cure, I was stuck like this. But I couldn't leave having only done 2 battles. The experience was just too valuable this early on, so it was a bit risky, but I managed to take out some of the weaker trainers at the start. There was no chance of me full clearing anymore, so eventually I left having only beaten 7 out of the total 12 trainers, which sadly means no extra prizes for us. I left Mount Moon and found a Tail Glow TM on the floor. An incredible move, but at the moment I only have 1 special move, and I also have no way of knowing what my stats will look like after I evolve, so I decided against using it for now. I took out the rival again and got ready to take on the trainers in Route 24 and 25, since both routes count as 1 segment, meaning I was about to face a whopping 10 mandatory as well as 6 optional trainers, all without using the Pokemon Center. Along the way I learned Magnitude, picked up another TM which contained Agility, and made it all the way to level 30, the level of our evolution. We're evolving. What do we get? A Luxray. No way. I got a Luxray. Luxray is my favourite Pokemon of all, so I was already really happy, and then the stat distribution went perfectly. When you evolve in Roguemon, the Pokemon is random, but your moves, ability, typing, and original stat spread all stay the same. Instead, it takes any extra base stat points you earn and randomly distributes them on top of your current stats. We got a big increase to our special attack and speed, and my defense stats got balanced out as well. Everything about it was perfect. Luxray and I managed to fully clear the rest of the segment. We freed Bill from his machine, but then came to a devastating realization. Check my item one more time. Teach 1 ground TM found before the next badge. Immediate choice. It was immediate choice. I won't pick any. The best way to follow the rules is to not choose any of them. If it's supposed to be immediate choice, it wouldn't be fair to decide now. Keep in mind this was only my 8th attempt at Roguemon, so I wasn't 100% clear on all of the rules yet, and my lack of reading led me to completely waste a very valuable prize roll. There was no use dwelling on my mistake though, so I marched forward into Misty's gym. I got paralyzed again with no way of curing it, but that didn't seem to phase our Luxray as he took down all of the remaining Pokemon and claimed our 2nd badge. And I'm not sure why, but I guess the Roguemon gods took pity on me and gave me an insanely lucky prize roll. Oh, we can teach 1 currently held TM. So we can teach Tail Glow. So in the end, it all worked out. We taught Luxray Tail Glow, creating a special attacking demon. We just need to hope we learn some more special moves to utilize it. I cleansed all of my items once again, wiped out the entire combined segment of Route 6 and 11, and hopped aboard the SS Anne, where I bullied the rival out of the way to get cut from the captain, and that's actually all we're allowed to do on the ship. So I left and caught a Pichu to be my HM friend. The next victim on our list was Lieutenant Surge, who had a really bad team that I one-shot entirely, and if Luxray wasn't strong enough already, the random TM he gave was Mega Drain. This was a huge pickup, but it came with a big decision. A choice between keeping Brick Break or Ancient Power. Brick Break was the better move and the one I wanted to keep, but that would mean losing Ancient Power, which is my only move that can damage Shedinja. Without our Shedinja coverage, the run could very well likely end at any point if we happen to encounter one. But it was a risk I was willing to take. After all, we were playing on the national decks, so the odds of running into one were extremely slim. I made up my mind with no regrets, and also picked up a candy jar, which meant I could now hold any rare candies or PP Max items I find permanently. The Force routing took us back up and all the way through Rock Tunnel. My Luxray was looking great and wiping out as much as he could, but he has a severe lack of PP, and this was my biggest issue the entire run. I picked up every item I could find, but there just wasn't any PP restoration items anywhere, so I had to leave Rock Tunnel missing out on 8 trainer battles because I literally didn't have any more moves I could use. The rival fight was as easy as ever, but up next was Route 8. Now normally this route wouldn't even be worth mentioning. Just another stepping stone to your next big battle. But not this time, because in this run, this route is cursed. At the start of each run, one random segment receives a temporary negative effect known as a curse. And there are a ton of curses it could be, with more actively being added to the game. Now it's no secret that some of these curses are considerably worse than others, but we don't find out our curse until we take our first step into the route. We got Sharp Rocks. All enemy Pokemon on this route will have a +2 crit rate. Honestly, this was an extremely tame curse segment, especially considering we can one-shot most Pokemon anyway, and I managed to clear the entire curse segment without being crit once. But these curse segments are no joke. Some of these can be brutal, and in such large segments that you may as well give up on the spot, so we got off extremely lucky with this one. The next few segments went by really easily. Erica gave us the 4th gym without putting up much of a fight. I took out Giovanni and all of his remaining grunts in Rocket Hideout, and climbed to the top of the Pokemon Tower, defeating every trainer in my path. The reason these areas were less challenging is due to my overwhelming level gap. But as of now, the game is about to take a pretty sharp shift. Trainers in Roguemon progressively scale in power, and going forward all trainers will have Pokemon that are minimum level 30, meaning they will all be fully evolved. On top of this, any Pokemon over level 40 now have the potential to be mega evolved, mythical, or even legendary Pokemon. But I was confident Luxray could handle anything thrown at him and started battling the 21 trainers in the Cycle Road segment. At least, I was confident until... oh no. Okay. Maybe now I had some regrets about my decision earlier, but it's nothing short of a miracle that Shedinja only had 2 damaging moves, each with 5 PP. Any more and we would have definitely died. But instead he used up all of his moves and killed himself with struggle. But the damage was already done. I had lost nearly all of my moves in the fight and the segment had only just begun. Luckily, I did find 1 max elixir on my travels, but when I'm not sure what possessed me to do this, I decided to hold off on using it for one more battle. That's when this happened. There's another one. The second Shedinja had hit Luxray. I used my remaining moves until I killed it with struggle, and now convinced we wouldn't see any more, I used my max elixir. I still had to miss 6 trainers, but given the circumstances, I was just happy to make it off the Cycle Road alive. I healed up at the Pokemon Center, but jumped straight back into the action in Koga's gym. Most of the Pokemon now were over level 40, so we were encountering all sorts of strong Pokemon like Mega Charizard Y, Zekrom, Zeraora, Regice. This was definitely much harder than the gyms before, and we weren't even at Koga yet. He started off with a Galarian Moltres who I took down with a super effective Ice Beam. Then came Hitmonchan, who seemed safe enough to set up on, so I used Tail Glow. And then he used Mirror Coat. Another potentially run-ending moment saved by an impromptu decision. Now with +6 on our special attack, the rest of his team didn't stand a chance and we took badge number 5. After such an intense segment, we do get a nice little vacation in the Safari Zone, but our relaxation can't last forever as we have to make our way to the biggest segment in the whole game, Silphco. A rival battle, Giovanni, and 30 other trainers are all up for grabs in here, and just like Mount Moon, there's a chance for an extra prize roll if we take out all of them. I went straight to the rival who was way tougher than all previous fights. He poisoned me straight away, causing me to use my last full heal, and indeed he whipped up a sandstorm, causing me chip damage for the rest of the fight. And then we very nearly died from hitting ourselves with confusion. I did manage to win the fight, but my healing had been drained to just 1 potion. But that didn't stop me from wanting to full clear. Giovanni has to be the last person we fight or else everyone else will leave after we beat him, so I decided to go to the top floor and work my way down, fighting every trainer and collecting every item on each floor. Hyper Potion, nice. But I knew I had to preserve my PP, so I employed a new strategy here. At the start of every fight, I would set up at least once, that way I could one-shot everything, and any health I might lose during setup could be regained with Mega Drain. I'm gonna have to use the bed, but I don't want to have to use it right away. One of the game's more generous rules is that you're allowed to sleep in this bed just 1 time during your stay at Silphco. I would have liked to do a bit more before needing to use it, but since the rival fight was so bad, I didn't have much choice, so I healed up and continued on down the floors. I get so many of those berries, they're really useless. An elixir. Perfect. Heal powder. Good item. Yeah, there's 10 trainers left. There's no way I have enough. I can do a couple more for XP, but I'm gonna have to go straight to Giovanni now, I think. I tried to save as much PP as I could, but even with that extra elixir, it wasn't going to be enough to full clear. And unsure of what Pokemon Giovanni might have, I wanted to make sure I had a decent selection of moves left to handle him. Turns out, he wasn't going to be that much trouble. I fully set up on his first Pokemon, who must have insane special defense to survive a hit, but the rest of his team couldn't handle it and we took down Giovanni. We did miss out on the extra prize roll, but to be honest, we were still looking incredibly strong. This game is entirely random, but so many small things have come together in this run to make our Luxray one of, if not the strongest Pokemon in the game. We stormed through Sabrina's gym and headed down to Cinnabar Island to do the Pokemon Mansion, where we were finding every item except for an elixir. This was becoming a genuine concern. If I didn't find at least one item to restore my PP for the Elite Four, it doesn't matter how strong I am if I don't have any moves left to use it. I just had to continue on and hope the items I needed would show up somewhere. I cleared out the rest of the mansion in Route 21 and then headed inside Blaine's gym. He had a Ledian, Spidops, Deoxys, Politoed, Floatzel, and Honchcrow, which honestly might be the weakest gym we've gone against so far, but also the most valuable because our prayers had finally been answered. Please give me a good move or give me an elixir reward. Hyper Potion and elixir! We have to take it. I need it so bad. There is also one more part of Roguemon I haven't explained because I didn't really use the feature until now. After beating a gym, there is also a buy phase where you can trade heal and status items for equal value. And I finally took advantage of this and traded 3 of my status heals for a full heal. But our final gym challenge awaited us, the biggest of them all with 5 trainers, 3 ace trainers and Giovanni himself. We were taking down the likes of Galarian Articuno, Ourself, Walking Wake, Monkey Dory, Calyrex, Origin Form Palkia, Zeraora, Kyurem, Tinglu, so many legendaries, but none could match Luxray as we made our way to Giovanni, who had the weakest team in the entire gym. But this meant we have all 8 badges now and we get our last prize roll from the gyms, which brought about a different kind of problem. I was thinking of taking this anyway, it's another elixir, but over the HP cap though, which means I have to toss Soda Pop. I was officially suffering from success and having to throw out items to make room for my new prizes. The rival tried to stop us from heading to Victory Road, but one look at our Luxray was enough to convince him otherwise. And we did actually level up from that fight, which put us back over the HP cap, so I had to toss away even more healing before heading up to Victory Road. This was the very last segment before the Elite Four, and also the last chance for us to win a prize roll if we managed to full clear the 12 trainers inside, 7 of which being ace trainers. Now, realistically, I didn't need the extra prize or experience, but I was up for the challenge. And when my first item was a Leperberry, I was convinced I could full clear and still keep my elixirs for the Elite Four. And we blitzed through the entire cave until the very last battle, which was a double battle. A chance for my HM friend to stretch his legs and help me get my final prize roll. We did it! We got a prize, we got a max potion and full heal. A revive, that could be huge. A revive is a very rare item in Roguemon that can only be used once if won as a prize. It works exactly how you'd expect it to. If we somehow faint during the Elite Four, Luxray is now allowed to be revived for 1 time only. This extremely lucky run had all come down to this. On just my 8th attempt at Roguemon, we had made it to the Elite Four. Lorelei was my first opponent, and her first Pokemon was a Quillfish, a surprisingly weak Pokemon, but I took this opportunity to fully set up my special attack and I one-shot her entire team. And then again, Bruno started off with a somewhat weak Pokemon. Agatha's first Pokemon was a Zangoose. The Elite Four were weak. In a world completely random, it seems the undeserving have found themselves at the top. Lance started his battle with a B-Barrel. These were the easiest battles in the entire game. Luxray had to put an end to these frauds. We needed to become champions and bring the balance back, but standing between us for the final time was once again our rival. An Incineroar to start off, stronger than we were used to, but I still elected to Tail Glow because I could just heal any status issues or health I lose, and I took him down. Emboar came out next, who resisted my 2 special moves and had insane special defense, but still, Luxray came out on top. Okidogi was put down, we got all our health back from Sudowoodo, Runerigus put into a second grave, and finally, Ampharos. The same Ampharos we faced many times before. All it would take was one final Ice Beam, and the game would be over. We did it! Our Luxray won! My Luxray. No, he's ours. We can share him. Luxray was the new champion and had beaten Roguemon. A perfect ending for my perfect Pokemon. But this wasn't really the end. This was just the beginning of something much harder to come. I had beaten Roguemon, but only at Ascension 1, the easiest Ascension of 3 difficulty tiers. If you're interested, I'll be streaming my attempts of Ascension 2 over on my Twitch, against much stronger Pokemon, 5 curse segments instead of 1, and many more much harder rules.